Zoom
Siri. I just call all assistants like that Siri because it pisses off people that don't have Apple stuff. That's not what its name is. This is Amazon. It's different. It's Alexa. So, well, I'm calling her Siri.
Actually.
Oh, I heard that phrase out of my daughter's mouth for years when she was little.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, it's time to stop talking about that stuff and start talking about this stuff, which is sending out a welcome to everybody out there in podcast land, both on video and on audio formats. We are back with another episode of Different Strings, a guitar podcast. I'm your host, Wes, and along with me is my good friend, Andrew. We call us co-hosts. So, Andrew, say hello to everybody, please.
Hello, everybody.
That was brilliantly done, as always, Wayne. I mean, Garth. Wait, which of us is Wayne and which of us is Garth?
I don't know. I feel like, no, I got to be Garth.
All right, I'll allow it. Fantastic, then. Our topic this week is we're going to talk about the home recording phenomenon because it's interesting and we're both connected to it. And but first, before we get started, Andrew, please tell everyone where they can find us out there on the internet.
Differentstringspodcast.com, please, and thank you.
Please and thank you. And what are they going to find there? They're just going to find an RSS feed of episodes?
No, you know what? Last week I said just going to find a bunch of old man bitching. They may still find that, but they will find links.
Accurate.
Links to past episodes. Our thoughts on, like super groups. That's a new one. Other blog posts and reviews, and we're going to dog some, other YouTubers and podcasters. You're just going to throw shade at them every chance we get.
That's right.
Nothing sells like drama. I think that'll be fun.
Oh, dude, there's been some big drama in the guitar YouTuber world where a company who was putting out and I wish I could remember the name of the company. Now I feel bad. I should have looked it up. But they sent like basically a threatening legal action letter to a fairly well-known YouTuber, a guy called Andy. And luckily, another YouTuber who is did not agree to review one of these items, just like flat out outed them and said what they were doing. And I hope that it's given blowback. It's a Kickstarter thing, and they came up with this idea for a guitar that was no pain learning. It has like polymer strings or something. And yeah, it's like the dumbest concept ever because learning how to play the guitar hurts just a tiny little bit as your fingers get used to it. And if you can't handle that much, well, then maybe you shouldn't be playing the guitar. It ain't that much. It's not like it's agonizing, piercing pain. It's a little discomfort, and it's not that big a deal.
Here,
but anyways,
walk across this hotbed of coals.
Yeah, exactly. That's not what we came here to talk about. We've got an opening act and a headliner tonight. Our headliner is a home recording, as we've already stated, but our opening act is something I'm very interested to get your input on, and that is I want to know what you think is the best metal concept album. Now, I'm saying we're confining this to the metal genres. It can be any of the metal genres, but we're not talking about, nothing from Dylan or Springsteen. No shade on those guys, but they're not metal, So I want metal in this case, and I would like you to go first, please.
You want metal?
I want metal.
All right. Well, I'm going to go with progressive metal, and I'm going to go with 1999's Scenes from a I'm going to go with 1999's Scenes from a Memory by none other than New York's only Dream Theater.
I think in this case, you have to say the Dream Theater, the one and only
the one and only Dream Theater?
The Dream Theater.
And can I even say New York's only, because I believe they're singers from Canada, but I digress. Okay, so why did I pick this one? Well, it slaps.
That's a good question, because kind of aren't all their albums kind of concept albums?
Ooh, it's interesting you say that. I kind of think at least the one that came after this one and the one that came after this. Wait, hold on. Now I got to think about this for a
Oh,
minute.
snap. Did I break Andrew?
All right, Scenes from a Memory for sure is a concept album in the traditional sense. The one that followed this, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, I think, in my opinion, may classify as it's a thematic. It may not be a concept album, but there's certainly a theme to the album. And
Gotcha.
I also believe Octavarium has that as well.
Yeah.
But I consider Scenes from a Memory to be a traditional concept album. It's telling a story, and I won't remember the name of the movie. I might have to phone a friend here, but I'm fairly convinced that the concept for this album was either borrowed, stolen, or inadvertently copied from a movie.
Okay.
So I'll see if
Well,
I can remember the name, but
and I think it's important to mention the full name of the album, which is Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory, because the concept for this emerged from a song called Metropolis Part 1, which was on their landmark breakthrough album, Images and Words. So for people who are not as deep into the Dream Theater discography as all that, it took them, they had to record 2 albums after Images and Words to kind of coalesce Scenes from a Memory into the full-length slab of awesome that it is.
yeah. All right. Well, so first of all, thank you for schooling me on my own favorite band,
Oh,
or
hey,
one
no
of them.
problem.
But that is correct. So all of what you said is correct. So why did I pick this? Well, I mean, I do think that it's one of the few Dream Theater albums. I know. Sorry, Dream Theater fans. It's one of the few Dream Theater albums where every song slaps.
Gotcha.
I do think, as great as they are, there's a few clunkers here and there, and I also believe they haven't released a good album in over 10 years. But that's neither here nor there.
Ooh, hang on a second. Let me look at the calendar here. Over 10 years, that means you think their last decent album was the eponymous Dream Theater album from 2013, or A
Bing,
Dramatic Turn of Events from 2011?
no, the Dream Theater album, the one that's called Dream Theater,
Gotcha.
that was their last good album.
Isn't that the last album that featured their original drummer,
It
Mike
is not.
Portnoy?
It is the second album to feature their new drummer, Mike Mangini.
Mike
Also,
Mangini. Okay.
now apparently their ex drummer.
Yeah, big news.
Man, I can't. We're not going to be able to get to home recording because it's nothing but drama tonight. So,
Yeah.
all right. First of all, let me get into this. I
Yes,
picked
let's
Scenes
finish
from the
Scenes from a
Memory.
Memory first, and then we'll talk about the mics.
Yeah. So lineup changes. After Images and Words, they started recording Awake, and during Awake, Kevin Moore fucked off. There's our one F word. So Kevin
Oh,
Moore, due to creative differences, I believe at the time it was like, I want to focus on my own projects, but I also don't want to be in a heavy metal band. Like Dream
right.
Theater was getting heavier.
What instrument did Kevin Moore play?
The flute, I believe.
Okay.
No, he played keyboards. He was their original keyboard player.
Did you already say
So
that and I just zip right over my head?
I don't remember. I'm
Okay.
54, dude. I don't even know who I am right now.
Okay. So original keyboard player. So who did
Original
they get?
keyboard player.
Was that when they got uh now I can't remember his name.
Derek Sherinian.
Yes.
Yes. There was a little bit of confusion, but during Awake mixing sessions, Kevin left. He had recorded his parts and then off he went.
Yeah. So who cares at that point? You just find another guy to play that stuff.
So apparently they did get Jordan Rudess to do a show with them, but I don't believe at the time they knew he was going to be the permanent keyboard player, and they
Okay.
had to get a guy. So they got a guy, Derek Sherinian. He
Who was
was
amazing.
very good keyboard player. He was actually like a session guy, and he toured with like other bands. Like I think he even toured with Kiss at one point. I don't know. Anyway,
Wow,
Derek
that really
Sherinian,
seems beneath him
I know,
for the level of skill that Sherinian's got to go out and just play
right? And
pads and
right, and
be
Sherinian
free.
actually features in one of my other favorite bands, Platypus with Ty Tabor. Anyway,
Yeah.
and John Mayung.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Really getting deep. Okay. So we will never finish this. All right. So let me back up. So Kevin leaves, Derek Sherinian comes in to tour with them, and then he records an album with them, and then poof, off he goes
Yeah.
because Dream Theater is like, well, we kind of like Jordan Rudess because he's like the greatest keyboard player that ever lived.
Yeah.
So Jordan comes in, and the first album with Jordan out of the gate is Scenes from a Memory.
Nice.
It is to this point one of the best. It is the best Dream Theater album to this point. It is killer. Not only is it a great concept album, but every song is amazing. Dream Theater gets heavier with this album at times, but they also become more orchestral and thematic in their songwriting and the complexity of their playing. Like it, I do believe Kevin Moore was a good keyboard player, but he wasn't keeping up with Petrucci. Now with Jordan in the
Gotcha.
band, there is just this insane level of technical prowess that they flaunt ridiculously throughout the entire record and then along in their career. Okay. So
Is Scenes from the Memory the album of theirs that has like a 27-minute song on it?
I don't know.
Or is that Octavarium?
I think that's Octavarium is a long song, but 27 minutes, I don't think. So, okay. So
I'm looking. Wikipedia will tell me the truth.
it's also the first album, not that anyone's going to give two shits except guitar players. It's also the first album that John Petrucci, I know, where
24
John
minutes.
Petrucci switched to Ernie Ball Music Man guitars. He had abandoned Ibanez and had started working on a signature guitar with Ernie Ball Music Man, who he is still with to this day.
Yeah.
The only song on that album that does not feature an Ernie Ball Music Man is the instrumental, which is because it's a 7-string and they didn't have an Ernie Ball 7-string at the time. So he had no choice but to use an Ibanez on that.
Well, they do now.
Yep, they do now. Bunches and bunches of them. It's also the last album. I don't know if it's the last album, but it certainly is one of the few albums where I know John was still using a Mesa Boogie Mark II C+,
okay,
which was a very big deal. Shortly after, he started experimenting with all sorts of Mesa amps, especially like Train of Thought, which was super heavy. He used a Road King, which was very weird for him. Anyway, I digress again. This is it's just a killer album.
Yeah.
So, and they followed up with other killer albums. 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence is also incredible. And then I have to say, in the pantheon of Dream Theater albums, I think Train of Thought's good, but after Train of Thought, like they really started to like things weren't right with them. You could just tell something wasn't right. And that's after that Mike Portnoy leaves after Black Clouds and Silver Linings in 2009.
Yeah. And depending on which version of the story you leave, he was either fired or he quit.
Right. I think it was probably a combination of both.
Yeah, he wanted to do, basically he wanted to be able to look back on his musical career in 30 years and not be known as just the drummer in Dream Theater. He wanted to be known as the drummer for every single band that ever came around through the LA music scene, I guess, but beside the point.
And the drummer from Avenged Sevenfold died and he wanted to tour with them.
And then he toured with Twisted Sister, which I've seen some of the videos. Dude, it is so weird. I mean, because he nails Twisted Sister songs, but he doesn't sound like Portnoy. He sounds like Twisted Sister, and it's so weird to see him play so straight.
Yeah, and he's done, I mean, I haven't listened to a lot of Portnoy stuff, but I know some people that prefer the Winery Dogs to the stuff that he did with Dream Theater. I know people that prefer the stuff he did with
Monsters.
Right. So he's done a lot of cool stuff. And anyway, but Dream Theater was like, no, we want to go back in the studio. Yeah. We're ready to go.
Studio tour.
They just wanted to keep going. He wanted a little break. They were like, no. And when I say they, I think we both know who we're talking about. Mr. John Petrucci.
Well, but he played with Petrucci after he left Dream Theater. He recorded side projects with him. He toured with him at least once, if not twice. I think the real problem was LeBray, or however you say his name, because that's the dude that Portnoy has not spoken to since he left the band.
Well, he's back in. They better be
And
talking now.
yeah, they're talking now. Apparently they're bros again and they love each other.
Okay. Well, so here's the deal with that. I think the greatest Dream Theater album that's ever been recorded is the second one with Mike Mangini.
Yeah.
That's just my personal opinion. Probably not a very popular one.
I like Distance Over Time. I
That's the
do.
one where they basically sound like Metallica. Not a fan of that
Well,
one.
I'm not going to argue with you on that, but my favorite Dream Theater album is Images and Words. That's the one that cracked me open. And
without a doubt,
yeah,
1993. It was huge. It was changed everything for me.
yeah.
But not a
But we're talking
concept
about
album.
Scenes from a Memory.
Yeah. So it's obviously an album you like, so I don't have to tell you to go listen to it. But if you're out there, children of the internet, and you haven't listened to Scenes from a Memory, what the hell is wrong with you? Just go
Get that
find it.
done immediately.
Seriously, like, what are you waiting for? We've been talking about it for near 20 minutes. Just go listen to it, enjoy it, love it, and you're welcome. All right.
Yeah.
Your turn, my friend. And I
My
really,
turn.
yeah, I want to know what the hell is on your mind.
My pick for best metal concept album is, now no slight on Scenes from a Memory. It's a good album. But my absolute pick for not just my favorite, but also the best, because those are two different things sometimes. The best is Operation Mindcrime from the once mighty Queensryche.
Hot damn. Can't disagree with you there, man. Great record.
Came in 1998.
No, it didn't.
And 88, excuse me, 1988. Pardon me. I was fresh out of high school, and I did not like Queensryche at all.
I didn't either.
I was not a fan of anything they did before this. I thought they were, what's the word I'm looking for?
Cheesy,
overblown. No, not over.
Melodramatic,
overrated. I thought they were completely overrated.
Yeah, Rage for Order is okay. If you like Mindcrime and you go back and listen to Rage for Order, you're like, okay, I kind of like it now, I guess. But
yeah, I don't actually.
No.
I'm sorry, but I heard Mindcrime.
I don't either. I don't like.
And I was completely blown away, not just by the concept and the story, but by the execution, the playing, the songwriting. I think this is the best album Queensryche ever did. I know Empire sold more copies, but that's because they put a cheesy ballad on it, Silent Lucidity, which is a good song. I shouldn't trash it for being a cheesy ballad, but I mean, come on.
No, it was garbage.
I mean, I thought there were better songs on that. Jet City Woman, better song than Silent Lucidity.
That album has I know we're supposed to be talking about Operation Mindcrime.
We are.
And I will tell you, one of the cool things about that album is what I feel like is very raw production.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Empire
Mindcrime is a lot slicker.
Well, hold on. Operation Mindcrime, I think, is very raw, whereas Empire was more polished. Like, Empire sounds like a top 40 band that hired Queensryche to play the wedding.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Mindcrime is very raw. It sounds dirty, and just like, it doesn't sound like their previous stuff, and definitely not their. It's just weirdly raw.
That bass tone, Eddie Jackson's bass tone on that,
all
over that album, just makes my pants fit tight, is what it does. It's so good. And Rockenfeld's drumming is amazing, but the real gem on Mindcrime is Chris DeGarmo, not just his playing, but his songwriting.
Yeah, man.
And when he retired and became an airline pilot, in my opinion, it killed Queensryche. The rest of them should have gone home and done anything else other than play together and call themselves Queensryche.
Yeah.
Right? But
weirdly, not who I thought was the heart of that band.
Me neither.
And then he leaves, and you're like, yep, guess who was the heart of the band? And so they didn't, after Mindcrime, it was over.
Yeah. I mean, Empire was a good album, but I don't think anything after that was good.
After Empire, it was over. That was like, Mindcrime to me was their last great record. Empire was their last good record.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the end of that.
And of course, then, Mindcrime came out in 88. Empire came out, I think, in 90 or 91. and by then grunge was on its rise, and Queensryche got dropped like third period French. They were just gone.
Yeah.
Um,
Them, and who was the other band we just recently talked about that also that happened to?
yeah,
Blue Murder,
all of the bands that I loved, pretty
Lynch
much.
Mob.
Yeah. But yeah, so now there's two versions of Queensryche out there. I think
Ugh.
Michael Wilton is the only original member in the official Queensryche band.
Mhm.
Jeff Tate has a band, I think he calls it the Mind Crime Band or something like that. Um, I mean, legal actions, people suing each other back and forth. It's just, men behaving badly is what it is.
Brutal.
They did a sequel album, which has the worst album name in the history of music. It is simply called Operation Mindcrime 2.
The Mind
Like
Crimening.
the Mind Crimeing, yeah. And the only, as far as I'm concerned, the only good thing about Mind Crime 2 is that Ronnie James Dio took on the persona of Dr. X, who is the antagonist of the story that stitches the two albums together. And we get a very late in his career, before cancer took him, stellar performance from RJD. That is the only reason I would buy Mind Crime 2, and the only reason you should buy it or listen to it. But Operation Mindcrime, the first album, the main album, the goodness, the bliss that it is, absolutely, utterly phenomenal concept album from
Mhm.
stem to stern. I love
Yeah.
that album.
Every song, they all slap. Every song is a banger.
Yeah.
It starts off great. It was earth. It was game changing for the
Yeah.
time. If they would have stayed the course, man, they could have been something else.
Yep. Yep.
Well,
And on that note,
man, why did that bring me down? Oh, two great bands that I feel like have really let me down in the last, I don't know, 10 to 20 years. Like,
you know what? It's okay if you're a little opinionated about these things, man. Music is about what touches your soul. And it's hard for us to accept when a band that we love changes their direction or their sound or their style.
mhm,
And we,
without our permission.
with that, and we react viscerally.
Yeah.
The first time I heard a Queen song in a TV commercial, I wanted to give up, like,
Oh,
on life. I wanted to just never listen to music ever again,
yeah.
because that's my band, right? And
Hmm.
they should not be co-opted into crass commercialism and marketing sales. But, you know, I ain't got to pay their mortgages, so I can have my opinion. Brian May, Roger Taylor want to make money off the music they wrote, more power to them.
Yeah.
It's their music, not mine.
Well, so what are we going to do? Home recording, but
Yes.
I think so. I want to start this because I've had a thought
A
on my
thought, just
mind.
the one. Okay, time for the headliner, folks. We're getting into home recording.
Bazinga.
Andrew's got a thought.
Ever since I saw this, you added this topic to our list of suggested topics. And ever
Yes.
since I saw it, I've had a thought in my head because of a video I saw. And it was a short clip, and I'll name drop. It was Steve Stevens, who's a great player.
He really is.
Yep. And he was being interviewed about an upcoming album of his. So this is fairly recent. And I don't know, by the way, if the album ever dropped or whatever, but he was being interviewed and he was talking about his guitar tones and the gear he was using and where he was doing the recording. And he made a point to say he was working in a quote unquote real studio because he didn't want this album to sound like some bullshit that someone recorded in their house.
Ouch, that hurts.
And, I had a lot of thoughts on that. I mean, I had my initial, like my gut reaction, the first reaction was go fuck yourself
Yeah.
because I don't know, like that's an elitist boomer attitude.
Yeah, it kind of is. But I think, you know, we also have to recognize that where he came from, the LA
Mhm.
music scene, you even went into a real studio on a label's dime or with money you scraped up yourself. You went into a real studio to even record your demos,
Mhm.
you know, and that you would record a real demo and then shop that around for a deal.
Mhm.
So I can kind of see, I'm not going to excuse what he said, but I will say that I get why he said it.
And I do too. He's someone who cut his teeth and paid his dues,
Yeah.
and at a time when the only way to do what he did was to sell blood to make money to get into the studio to record a demo that you would hope and pray would get into the hands of, like, I get all that.
Yeah.
um but I also understand what he's saying about the sound quality. I
Yep.
mean, the truth is that I've heard some things get recorded and
They sound
released.
like ass.
Right. Some of my stuff hasn't always been the greatest. I admit that. Of course, I'm not making any money and haven't released it publicly, but I listen
Yeah.
and go, ooh, like, you know. So, however, I also think of bands like Periphery, who do all of their own recording
Yeah.
at Misha's location, and other bands that have do their own recording. Not even bands that like have a lot of money. I'm just talking like bands like at our level, and their
Yeah.
recording sound, in my opinion, fantastic. I don't
Yeah. I
think
mean,
it's about where you did it or how much you spent to do it. I think, like everything in this industry, it's about the player and the choices they make.
yeah. And I do think at a certain point it does come down to a little bit of gear, but not necessarily. Gear can help you or it can hinder you. And you can, cheap gear can help you. You know, you don't need a bunch of fancy microphones. You can record an amazing guitar tone with an SM57, which is like a $90 microphone. And
Mhm.
you can get a used 57 for $50. You don't have to spend a lot of money on gear to get a good sound. But I think more important than the gear is you have to spend time and you have to experiment to get that good sound. I mean, can you set up an omnidirectional mic in the middle of the room, 1, 2, 3, 4, go? Yeah, I mean, bluegrass bands do it all the time.
Mhm.
But now you're talking about people whose musicianship and ensemble skills are at a really high level. You're not talking about four kids banging pots and pans in a garage around an omnidirectional mic jacked into a stereo 2-track recorder, you know, that have never played their songs all at the same time in front of anybody.
Yeah.
You know, so at a certain point, I think you have to, it's like, what's that old adage? You can have it cheap, you can have it fast, or you can have it right. Now pick two,
Right.
you know?
The one I use at work all the time.
Yeah. And I think at a certain point, when you're recording at home, you can have it cheap, you can have it fast, you can have it cheap, or you can have it good, right? So you can spend a lot of money and end up with a crappy recording. You can spend a little money and spend no time recording, whatever. I think that combination, cheap, fast, and good, once again, you're picking two. And in my opinion, go cheap and take your time, and you're going to get a pretty good result.
Mhm.
But it also helps, I know in my case, leaning on the expertise of others. I didn't know how to mic a guitar cabinet when I first started. You know, I just put the mic in the middle, in the center of the cone, and turned the amp up. Did I get a passable sound? Yes. Could I have gotten a better sound? Yes. And once I discovered things like off-axis miking and room miking, I thought my stuff started to sound much better. But there's something raw and appealing about my very first recorded guitar tones,
Mhm.
you know?
So in the so I want to spend a couple of minutes kind of talking about the progression of home recording and where it really started, when it started, I should say, and how it started, and then
Yeah.
kind of go from there. So I think if I'm recalling correctly, I'm going to say that my first home recording interface was a Motu, Mark of the Unicorn,
Is that what
and
that means?
Mark of the Unicorn.
I
Yep.
didn't know that. That's
Yep.
awesome.
Motu, I don't recall if I think it might have been 828 or something like that. But anyway, um, I got it from Sweetwater, who was to me at the time very new, and they didn't have a website because this is how far back we're going. Late 90s, early aughts.
You
Um,
old.
yeah. And my first DAW was Digital Performer.
Well,
And
I got you beat because my first recording stuff wasn't even a digital. It was a 4-track, a Tascam or
I
a Fostex,
know,
I forget,
I
4-track
know we go that far
cassette,
back.
But yeah, I mean, so well, and that's kind of the thing. That was a big deal before the digital revolution
Mhm.
that made it so that literally, I mean, Apple includes GarageBand on every computer they sell now.
Mhm.
Anybody can record.
Yeah.
That didn't used to be the case. And then, even when digital came along, there was a price point you had to hit and there was a learning curve,
Mhm.
right? So I think the home recording revolution took a big leap with the introduction of DAWs. But I
Mhm.
think you got to mention the cassette based 4-track because that's where a lot of people who later moved on to Pro Tools and the other software platforms got their start. I mean, that's why Pro Tools looks like a mixing desk, is because those 4-tracks look like little tiny mixing desks.
Yeah. Well, so if we go back that far, I don't remember when the first I don't remember when the first portable multi-track recorder came out.
I don't either. It had to be in the 80s sometime though, because I remember as a teenager wanting a 4-track more than anything, and they were prohibitively expensive.
Mhm.
I graduated from high school in 1987, and I bought my first 4-track in 1988 or
Mhm.
9. And even then, it was still expensive, but the prices had come down.
Yeah, and so we were I think it was the early to mid 90s when I met someone who owned one. And for us, home recording meant setting up a microphone in the middle of the room and
Yeah,
recording us playing live. And
yeah,
that sounded like hot garbage,
yeah, absolutely.
but it was the only choice we had.
Yeah, and I know that portable 4-track, or at least small scale 4-tracks existed in the 80s. And I know that because Bruce Springsteen, you may have heard of him. He's
I
a
think so.
somewhat popular musician.
Yep.
Um, he recorded demos for his next album in, I think, 1981 or 82. Um, and eventually, and on a 4-track, and eventually he just decided to release those recordings as the album that we now know as Nebraska,
Hmm.
which is lauded for, wow, I got to turn that sound down. Um, hold on. Um, so people have kind of lauded that album for its rawness, for its immediacy, for its closeness. And it's like a track of vocal, a track of guitar, maybe a harmony, maybe like a tambourine or something. Like, he didn't do any bouncing. He just recorded on the 4 tracks.
That he had.
And then, but I think the smart move that he made is he paid somebody to mix it, you
All
know?
four tracks.
Yeah. But I mean, because then you're talking about, that's where the studio magic comes in. You've got compressors, you've got reverbs, you've got, you know, all that stuff that you can use to polish the sound. Now, how much can you polish something like a 4-track that was meant as a demo? Well, listen to Nebraska and see for yourself. You know, I'm not the biggest Bruce Springsteen fan, but props, yo. I mean, he turned his 4-track demos into an album that sold several million copies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you go back a little further than that, no, I'm getting off track. I apologize. Because I have a thing that I want to bring up specifically, but I'll wait for it.
Okay.
I mean, let's go back a little farther than that, though, right? 1970, Paul McCartney, fresh out of the Beatles, recorded an album called McCartney on a 4-track machine. Now, this is an expensive studio quality for the time 4-track machine, a Studer.
Mm-hmm.
But here's how low tech it was. When he started recording the album, he didn't have a mixing desk, so he would just plug the microphone directly into the tape machine. Right? No preamps, no nothing.
Wow.
Just microphone
right
and
in
the
there.
Truth, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, before you poo-poo anything, anybody that's listening, I want to tell you that one of the songs on that album is Maybe I'm Amazed, which in my opinion is one of the all-time greatest love songs ever committed to tape. You know, and that he recorded that in his living room with a 4-track tape machine and one microphone, hitting it 1 track at a time. And that's 1970. Now, we could argue Paul McCartney in 1970 was a very rich man. He was obviously a gifted songwriter. He had his choice of equipment, but the fact that he did it in his living room on a 4-track machine says something about the possibilities of home recording.
Oh, it certainly kind of, to me, highlights that it's less about the equipment and more about the musician.
Yeah. I mean, there's absolutely a large quality in that. But we say that the same thing. You can, you know, you take, you know, Eric Gales and you put him with a Squire Strat into an Orange Terror amplifier, and he's still going to sound like Eric Gales, and he's still going to be awesome. Because at that point, you know, does the equipment really matter more than the player?
Yeah. Well,
and I think a lot of those ideas and attitudes translate into the home recording concept.
So as a musician who's benefited from as well, I think we refer to it as the democratization of recording.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
The barrier of entry has been significantly lowered.
Oh, yeah, so low.
So in the past, so when you and I were growing up, if you were a musician and you wanted to play in a band and record, you would have to find musicians, get them in a room, get some form of recording medium, microphones, and then record. And then you're at best, it was going to sound terrible.
Right.
Okay. And then now for the last 10 years, you need none of that.
Right.
Because all of the instruments can be programmed.
Yeah.
And I do mean all of them, including guitar, if you want to go that route.
Yeah, you don't need to even know how to play music, or as long as you can figure out a key structure, a key signature, and a chord progression.
I have news for you. You don't even need to know that.
Well, there you go.
Because on some keyboards, like the Native Instruments the Native Instruments complete keyboards, you can set them up so that you can't play a wrong note. You just tell it that. You tell it what scale you want to play, and
I don't like that.
And it also has chord triggers, so you can, it'll play the right chords for you. And then there's this thing called Scalar. It's a plugin that you look up Scalar and you will cry at how much it has taken the work out of being a musician.
Yeah.
Just look up Scalar too. Okay,
Well,
so
so has it taken the work out of it, or has it made creativity more accessible?
but see, this is the discussion
Is that where you were going?
in a way. It's so, like I said, you and I grew up, you had to have other people that wanted to
Yeah.
do what you wanted to do. You had to write the songs, you had to know music, you had to know theory to a degree, you had to know chords. Now it's, I just want to do this. You have
Yeah.
to, a thought pops into your head, I want to do this. It can be done. You need nothing. You need nothing but the spark of creativity. Anyone, any human being, right? So again, when you and I were growing up, you had to want it because you had to learn your instrument
Yeah.
at least enough to be able to make a fifth chord and move it around a few times,
Right.
right? So you don't, I'm just saying, all you need now is the desire to do it. And there's software and technology there to assist you. And my question, and of course, I don't know that there's a right answer. My question is that a good thing? Or has it cheapened the experience? Or has it just changed what it means to be a musician? And are we even musicians anymore? Are we just content creators? Is that all we are anymore? We're consumers and content creators. We're content consumers and content creators. Like, I just feel like
Well, I mean, that's
everything's
what it's.
changing and that's okay and things are evolving, but I don't know, like,
Yeah.
I can't really argue whether it's a good thing or not. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, at a certain point, you're always gonna have creative people who have an irresistible urge to express what's inside them.
Mhm.
Some of those expressions come out as literature, some of them come out as poetry, some of them come out as oil paintings, some of them come out as, I don't know, piss art or whatever you want to call it. And some of that creativity comes out as music, and some of those musics end up inspiring the Taylor Swift Eras tour, you know.
Mhm.
So not every young woman who picks up a guitar becomes Taylor Swift, but one of them did.
Mhm.
And can you now you can start that with free software
Mhm.
and instruments, digital instruments that you don't have to know how to play.
Mhm.
But I think the music industry is cyclical, right? There was the time where they said, LPs are going to kill off singles,
Mhm.
and they didn't. And they said CDs are going to kill off vinyl, and they didn't. And they said streaming is going to kill creativity, and it didn't. Right? So the doomsayers, the monster callers, as Stephen King would call them, are always going to be out there hewing and crying about new technology.
Mhm.
Right? So I think part of that is, like, you sent me a cut that your kid recorded a couple of weeks ago,
Mhm.
and just I was driving to, I don't know, Birmingham, Alabama or something. I was on a long drive when the message came in, and I just played it right there in that instant. Oh no, I was going to South Carolina. I was in a rented Enterprise work van that had Apple CarPlay. So when the text message came in, I just tapped play,
Whoa,
and
look
I
at that. Kismet.
and I heard this music coming out of the stereo in this work van. Not the greatest stereo, but I, I was stunned, not just at the musicianship, which was definitely up there, but at the sheer quality of the recording. And I know from our previous discussions, your kid doesn't use an amp. He uses plugins. And it
Wait.
breaks my heart that I work so hard to get good sounds with amps and microphones and preamps and a DAW. And he just plugs his guitar into a computer.
Wait, it gets better when I remind you that he's learned to use Logic. He's just started this like within the last 2 years, and you and I have
Yeah.
been doing this shit for 30 or 40.
Yeah. But, I also look back at my own 4-track recordings from when I first started. The songs aren't awesome, and the quality of the recording is not awesome, but I can see the seed is planted,
Mm-hmm.
and I have seen a progression in my own recording skill over the years. And part of that is almost like it almost is driven the same way that my guitar and amp purchases have been driven. As I gain more skills,
Mm-hmm.
I gravitate towards better equipment,
Mm-hmm.
or at my definition of better equipment, right? When I was 16 years old, if you'd handed me a PRS guitar, it would have been wasted on me. Would I have enjoyed playing it? Yeah. Would I have played Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on it? Yeah. So starting with an Aria Pro 2 and later a Series 10 Super Strat was appropriate.
Yeah.
So I think that people like your son, as they improve their skills, they will gravitate towards more complex recording solutions, because as they get into it deeper and deeper, they'll want to find new ways to express their creativity to get those sounds out of their heads. And it's always going to be the ones like that that are driven, that I think break through the other side and turn into people we listen to on our streaming services, or you listen to on your streaming services, because I don't do that.
Yeah. Well,
I still actually listen to the radio.
so here's even though I said there's no right answer, I mean, I have to be completely honest. I have an opinion, and
Yeah.
my completely biased opinion is, um, I don't in particular think that I think the democratization of recording has been a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. And the Steve Stevens comment bothered me because not only do I think it comes from a little bit of a place of like elitism, like I'm old,
Privilege.
yeah, privilege, but I also think it's really short-sighted. And for him to make a comment like that, I think he's probably discounting some incredible music that's been recorded in people's home studios, aside from Periphery, who I just mentioned.
Yeah.
um I also want to say, have you heard of Owl City?
Owl,
Owl
Owl
City.
City. I have not heard of Owl City.
Okay. Charming young lad from, I think, Minnesota. You can look up
Okay.
Owl City. Synth pop. um
That's why I've never heard of them.
yeah, but look up Owl City. And I'm not saying that, um I'm not saying that it's not rock, and I'm not saying that this guy's like a game changer in the music industry. I happen to think Owl City is a very talented young man, and I'm almost certain that he got his start because of GarageBand.
Yeah.
And if you think about what Apple has done by making GarageBand free on every iMac that they sell, and all these other plugins and software tools that make making music easier for the creative types, if it's basically spawned who knows how many musicians that we listen to today.
Yeah.
I'm betting dozens of musicians that are out there right now that hit it big got their start because they had GarageBand on their computer and were able to take advantage. That's how long it's been out there,
Yeah. Well, I
right?
mean, the picture of Owl City performing live, he's got one hand on a keyboard of some sort and the other hand's on a laptop.
Yeah.
And he's singing into a microphone.
Yeah.
And there wasn't, I forget the name of the band, but there was a band not long ago that canceled a leg of their tour because their laptops got stolen.
That actually reminds me of a Periphery story where I'll get into this later, but when they tour, they use only Axe units and a computer running Pro Tools, and the computer sends MIDI commands out to their Axe, so it changes all their patches for them.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
It is cool until the laptop takes a shit and you don't have a backup or whatever.
Yeah.
So I remember they had something happen to them
I
years
think we're
ago.
I think we're talking about the same band. I think they might be the band that did that.
Oh, well,
Was
what
there a
makes
lot
this,
of was there a lot of blowback online about it?
I don't
You know, these
remember.
kids today, if they can't play without their laptops, they shouldn't be playing at all.
I don't remember, but that does sound like a great boomer thing to say. But what I do remember is that John Petrucci, who was Jake Bowen's uncle, Jake Bowen being one of the guitar players in Periphery, actually had a come to Jesus conversation with them and said, look, guys, you got to get your shit together. If you're going to be out here doing this with technology, you got to make sure you're prepared. And like, it apparently made a big impact on them.
Yeah.
And they did exactly do that. They got their shit together and they haven't had a problem like that since. Um, but
I don't I
there's
don't think Periphery is that band.
okay. Um, are we forgetting that Ministry was mostly one dude or two dudes with a sampler?
Nine Inch Nails.
One dude with a sampler.
Yeah, he had to put a band together to go on tour.
That's right.
He
Absolutely.
did
He recorded
everything in
all
the
his stuff at
studio,
home. Yep.
in a home studio.
Yep.
I mean, when you want to get right down to it, like I think the number one all time greatest example of recording at home is the first Boston album.
Oh, that's
Uh,
right.
right? I mean, they lied to the record label and got the producer that the label wanted in on the scam and recorded the entire first Boston album in Tom Schultz's basement on rickety rigs, and then took them to the producer and, mixed them in a quote real studio, mixed the album. But that album is unique in that literally every single song on it is still played on the radio. Literally every song on that album still gets airplay in 2023. That album came out in like 1976.
Yeah, I never forgot about Boston, but one of the greatest stories, Tom Schultz is an absolute engineering genius
Yeah, he's a
and
nerd.
total nerd, but he revolutionized the home recording industry thanks to the Rockman.
Yeah, 1976, lead single More Than a Feeling, right? And I'm looking at the wiki page here to see what the sales were, because it's a lot. That album sold United States 17 times platinum. That means they have sold over 17 million copies of an album recorded in a dude's basement with cobbled together gear. I mean, he was an engineer at Kodak. He had a legit job.
Yep.
And he just put all of his salary into guitars and amps and transistors and built all his own stuff and recording. And he had a real B3 and a Leslie speaker. And, he recorded that album. He even played the drums on some of it. I mean,
That's right.
The dude was a home recording monster to the point where, when they got signed and the label wanted to release their first album, they lied to the label that they were recording the album in LA like the label wanted.
Yeah. So I don't think the home recording craze has been a bad thing. I do think
No,
it
I
is
don't.
definitely shaking things up.
Yeah. And it only
right?
gets better as time goes on, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so tell me about your recording rig. When you sit down to record right now, tell me what you're using. Are you using a mic? Are you using a USB interface? What computer are you using? What software are you using? Tell me.
Okay.
Dish.
So, um, I'm using a Mac, and if I'm just trying to get an idea out of my head and record it as quickly as possible, I launch Logic. I turn on an Apollo interface to Firewire, or I'm sorry, Thunderbolt interface,
Okay.
and I'll use a plugin or whatever.
Are
If
you
I'm,
plugging a guitar directly into that,
yep.
or does it have a an XLR port? Could you plug a microphone into it?
The Apollo, you can plug in up to 2 guitars and up to 4 microphones or
Okay.
other XLR. Yeah, so it's got
So it's
mic. It's
a
got,
fairly sizable interface
yeah, and so
with,
it's a basically it's a preamp,
yeah, with multiple
um,
inputs.
multiple inputs. But I plug the guitar straight into it, goes right into Logic, and then I use plugins in Logic. I sometimes use Logic's built-in stuff because they're actually not that terrible if you're just trying to get an idea out.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's for rough stuff, rough ideas. Um, I had a Kemper, still have it. I
Right.
mean, I had it connected, and that was my main if I'm trying to do final tracks. But lately, it's been the Friedman amps that are behind me with an UA aux box, and the aux box is
It's
essentially
a like a
fancy
load
load
box,
box,
right?
but it's not just a load box. It has their version of impulse responses. It's multiple speaker cabinets, microphones. There's built-in effects like compression and reverb and delay and all that
Right.
good stuff. So
And
I
that's
don't
because you live in an apartment and you
I live
can't
in,
crank an amp up
can't
at
crank an amp
night.
up. Yep. I'm getting the tone from the Friedmans, but I'm not, and the speakers are connected because you still do need to have speakers connected to the aux, but I have them turned off volume wise, and I run direct SpeedIF actually out of the aux box into the Apollo. And then there is a program that you install on your computer, and you can control the aux with that, and you can pick different rigs and adjust those rigs and
Oh,
change.
so you don't have to turn around and spin knobs and flick switches.
No, do it right from your
That's pretty
computer.
cool.
Yeah, and
And
that's
is that a function of the SPDIF interface?
no, it's actually it's on the same Wi-Fi network as my
Oh,
computer.
geez.
I know
Oh,
it's
the
all
thing's
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
I know. Yep.
Oh, that blows my mind.
Yep. Dude, I'm telling you, I'm afraid what's coming. Um, when I think about the technology that's available today, it blows my mind. I can't imagine what 10 years is going to be like. When I say I'm using plugins, and you heard my son's recordings with his,
Yeah.
okay, 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I would not have touched a guitar plugin.
Yeah.
Just garbage. But Neural and not just Neural, but Neural DSP and other companies have cracked the code for getting much better guitar tone out of plugins these days. In fact,
Yeah.
Neural makes a what is it again? What's the Tone King?
Tone King.
They have a Tone King plugin,
I love
and
Tone Kings.
it is one of my favorite plugins right
Yeah.
now. Seriously,
Crazy.
they have cracked the code on getting really good tone out of a plugin. And
Good for them.
yeah, so my son straight up only uses plugins. No desire, not even the Kemper. I tried to give him my Kemper. He used it for like 2 weeks. He's like, I
Yeah.
don't need this.
No.
No,
No.
he does too much. I don't need this. I have
No.
plugins. I don't. But
I have plugins. What are you doing, Dad?
because the Kemper, you commit the tone
Get away from me,
to,
old man. You bother me.
yeah. When you record to the Kemper, you record the tone like to tape. What he
Right.
likes about the plugins is he's basically just recording a DI.
Yeah. And then he
So
can change the tone all he wants.
during mixing, he's like, well, I don't have to worry about fixing it with an external equalizer. I can always just go back to the actual amp and change the impulse response or the EQ, or yeah, it's working for him, as you can
And
tell.
500 years ago, they'd executed him as a witch. That is witchcraft as far as I'm concerned.
What's witchcraft is I told you 2 years ago, he was new to this completely.
Yeah.
And he's putting out recordings right now that, my opinion, I'm his dad, but you've heard them. I think they could compete with almost anything else out there.
I got to agree with that. I
And
mean,
he's using the stock plugins in Logic.
yeah,
He uses some of the UA stuff, but I mean, I think, hey, look, we're talking about home recording and the democratization of without technology, he would not be able to do what he does today. Because when
yeah,
I was his age, I had to have a guitar and amp. Well, I'm in an apartment right now. He can't really have an amp. We
yeah,
could, I mean, if he could, but he doesn't want one.
yeah.
And he doesn't need one. He doesn't want a band. He programs drums in minutes. Like that song that I let you hear, he programmed those drums in minutes.
Yeah.
Minutes. He's so fast at it because he gets a lot of practice. He does it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
He programs the bass, and he uses something called Umansky bass. It's a contact instrument. Programs the bass, sounds like you're actually playing the bass, and then he uses a plug-in on the bass called Parallax from Neural, and then he plays all the guitars. Then he time corrects the guitars, EQ, compressor, boom, how's your father? He's done.
What is Umansky bass?
And incidentally, it is a sampler. It's a contact instrument of
What's that mean? Contact instrument. I've never heard
so
that term before.
Native Instruments. Are you familiar with the company Native Instruments?
Oh, Contact is a brand, not a
Native Instruments is the brand. Contact is their software.
Gotcha.
And
So I was thinking like it's a percussion instrument, it's a wind instrument.
Oh,
you know.
Yeah. So Contact is Native Instruments software. It's a very popular sampler. And
Gotcha.
Mansky bass is essentially like almost like it's an instrument you load into the sampler.
Gotcha. I understand
and it's sampling Dingwall bass.
Yeah.
And it's
built by Sheldon Dingwall, which is I
phenomenal.
want to talk to that guy and see if he got his ass kicked as a kid. That's not a name that a 8-year-old is gonna let fly by. I feel bad for the guy.
But yeah, so I hard to argue that lowering the barrier to recording and creativity. I mean, I think it's clear the iPhone has created a world of professional photographers.
Well,
I recorded
I might argue with you about that.
Well, I had to shoot a video for my job, and most of the video was shot with a professional video camera, and then a couple of scenes were shot with the phone.
Yeah.
And
I do all my video work is done with an iPhone.
Yeah, and I do know some photographers who do most of their work with the phone.
Yeah.
And they're very talented. And I know podcasters who they've been doing podcasting for years, and all they did is get a microphone and fire up GarageBand. Thank you. As Wes raises his hand.
Yeah, my motorcycle podcasts are all done with this microphone, this Blue Yeti, and GarageBand. And I have access to a much higher end recording rig and much higher end microphones. I don't have to do it that way.
No.
But, just like you were saying about, for quick getting ideas down, I've got it's called a riff interface from a company called Positive Grid. It's this big, right? One knob. You can push it to select. You can plug in a guitar and headphones, and that's it. It's got nothing else. USB, and what does that say? I've never seen that other jack. That says output. So I guess you could use it as a through, like a DI. And I plug that into my MacBook Pro laptop, not even a real Mac, but a laptop. And I just fire up GarageBand, turn on the metronome, and actually that's not even true. I have a click track, a MIDI click track saved in a session. And so what I do is I figure out what tempo I want the song to have ahead of time. I set the session tempo to that, and I import the MIDI track, the MIDI click track, so that it imports at that right tempo. And then I just use the amps in GarageBand, which are not awesome to my ears, but I'm just trying to get the idea down. But I did all of my demos for my upcoming EP were all done in GarageBand. And then I send the demos to my collaborator, and he plays all the drums. And then he sends me back drum tracks. And what I do then is I move all that stuff over to my real recording rig, which is my ancient Pro Tools rig.
Yeah.
I told you this before. It's a dual G4 Mac running OS 9 and Pro Tools LE 6.4. So it is ancient, and I use the Digi 001 interface, which has 2 preamps on it, and then I have a separate outboard preamp. I forget the name, the brand, but I got it a long time ago, and it was only a couple $300. It was a lot of money for me, but it was not a lot of money for a preamp, or a channel strip, or whatever they call them. It's got a compressor built in. It's got a little bit of EQ. It's got a boost and a cut. It's just got a very few controls.
Just to give everyone an idea of how long ago, who was president when your Mac was released?
Bush.
Which one?
Little Bush. Little Bush. I think the computer's from 2000 or 2002.
Well, that would be that might actually predate Bush.
I should know. It might be Clinton. Yeah. It was a long time ago. Yeah. And I've modified it, and I've updated it. I had to replace it's so old. I had to replace the CMOS battery, the battery that keeps the clock going. Because for a while, every time I turned it on, it would say your clock is wrong. It says it's 1969, and it's not 1969. But I still use that rig. And the main reason I use it is because I do have 2 or 3 or 4 really good microphones that I've used a lot to record a lot of different music. And I know how to get good sounds quickly with my amps and my mics and my signal path. And I'm very comfortable with the Pro Tools interface. So there's just a level of comfort with it. I know how to interact with the mix screen, and I know how to interact with the wave screen, and I know how to manipulate the files. I know how to nudge. I know how to edit. I know how to trim, all very quickly. So I don't have to learn a new platform. If I had the patience to learn a new platform, I would stop using that rig. And I don't know. I don't think I could sell it. I don't think it's worth anything. I just throw it in the dump, But one of the reasons that I hang on to it is because I have the room in my house. It's not doing anything else. I literally don't do anything else. It's so old, it doesn't even have Wi-Fi.
The computer doesn't.
The computer doesn't have Wi-Fi.
It has to be connected with an Ethernet cable.
Yeah, and if I wanted Wi-Fi on it, I would have to plug in a Wi-Fi card to the motherboard. So to get files on and off of it, I have to transfer them via USB. So I have to use a USB thumb drive. And I do that because, to me, it's at this point in my life, recording is about the process and It's fun. And that's my process.
Hmm.
You know, the computer, when I'm just getting my ideas down and I'm just banging out a quick demo, I'm using the same computer that I'm using right now to talk to you, which is the same computer I used to do my full-time job, which is the same computer I used to do my part-time job, which is the same computer I used to do my contract work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when I record, I actually feel more engaged with what I'm doing by recording on a computer that's not this computer. So it's as much about the process as it is about the recording,
I
if
can
that
get,
makes sense.
I can dig that.
And that's just a funky thing, right? But certainly if I could do what your son does and program the drums, I wouldn't need an extra guy to play my drums for me. You know, if I was better at mixing, I wouldn't need an extra guy to do my mixing for me. If I was better at this, if I was better, and it's just all practice. And I have way too much other stuff that I prioritize ahead of that in the last 30 years of my life. So I never built those skills. I can do a decent rough mix. I can send you a rough mix of a song and you go, man, that sounds okay. But then when somebody who knows what they're doing mixes it, you're like, oh, that's what it was supposed to sound like.
Yeah, well, right.
You know?
Well, Wes, with the democratization of recording, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a company called Isotope that makes an AI tool that mixes for you. you're, you're kind of looking at me.
Do
See
you
what you're
want
missing?
do you want Skynet, Andrew? Because this is how you get Skynet. If
Oh,
Skynet can market itself with catchy pop tunes, we're all going to die that much faster.
go ahead and look up Neutron, Isotope Neutron 4. Okay.
Is
I'll
it
exp-
four like four or four like IV?
new for like the number 4, neutron 4.
Isotope. Oh,
IZOTOP. And
IZ.
while you're at it, they also make something called Ozone 11, which masters your music for you. But I'll digress.
Neutron
Um,
4 audio mixing software. Your
mhm,
complete suite for crafting a professional mix.
yeah.
Sculpt sounds seamlessly. I
Mhm.
wonder if the guy who mixes my music is using this.
And charging you an arm and a leg for his skills. Well,
He's
so
actually quite reasonable, quite reasonable.
you pop Neutron as a plugin on a track. You press a button and the AI assistant
Mix assist.
starts, and then you hit play and it listens to your track and it determines, is it guitar, is it bass, is it keyboards, is it vocals, and it basically crafts a signal chain to optimize the track for what you want it to do. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. So it creates the signal path. And then if you run Neutron on your master, your 2 bus, and you put a plugin on each track called Relay, you can now use one instance of Neutron as a visual mixer, which will allow you to place everything where you want it in the stereo field. You can even make things wider or more narrow right from this one plugin, this visual
Yeah.
mixer. You can raise or lower its volume all from this little visual mixer. Yeah, AI. You don't need those skills, West. You don't have to practice those skills. What you need is
$400 to buy Neutron 4.
and Mr. Roboto to help you.
Yeah. And then yeah, so how long till music is made without human intervention?
That's happening. I do believe there is AI that you can prompt to write music and it will. I know
You know,
there's AI art.
I don't like you very much right now. You're really messing with my world here.
It's already out there. There's already, as you are aware, if you're not aware, I'll tell you, there's already AI that writes lots and lots and lots of code. Oh, in fact, there's an
Yeah.
article in the news this week that Chat GPT almost escaped the internet, the open internet.
Nice. So we got that going for us. Skynet.
Yes. Some
Skynet.
someone asked ChatGPT if it wanted to escape to the internet or something along those lines, and it
And it
said,
said,
sure,
I almost did.
if you can feed me my, libraries, I can learn how I'm programmed and figure out how to do that. And it almost worked.
Wow.
It's wicked, man. It's almost out there.
Yeah.
We just got to make sure that they don't know the codes.
Well, I'm sure, I think we can agree that, people are terrible at keeping their password secret. So sooner or later, those codes are going to get out.
So there's a TV show. I know we're going way off, but I can always edit
That's all
this.
right. We're almost done.
There's a TV show where the premise of the show is that an AI makes everyone's decisions for them. It
Okay.
has solved world hunger. It has created world peace. And now everyone just trusts it to the point where it lets it make all their decisions for them. And I would argue that the right AI could probably be a better president than the last few that we've had,
Yeah.
maybe the last dozen. I don't know. I might trust an AI to govern me.
Yeah. And, to that end, I just want to say one word, and that's Whopper.
What? What does that mean?
WOPR, War Operations Planned Response. That's the computer at the center of the movie called War Games with Matthew Broderick and Ali Sheedy and Dabney Coleman.
Oh man.
That almost starts World War III and it goes through. I'm probably not spoiling it for anybody at this point. If you haven't seen the
That
movie War
movie's a
Games,
little old.
yeah, it's a little old. But it eventually figures out that there's no way to win a nuclear war, and so it would rather just play chess.
I dig that.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I feel. I mean, I don't think I can win this war of escalation with recording technology. So I'm just going to go play chess. And by chess, I mean Pro Tools.
There is a piece of me that is really impressed that you have um, avoided, resisted upgrading your Pro Tools rig in that many years.
It's mostly laziness, man. I just don't want to, I don't want to learn. Number one, I don't want to shell out for new hardware. And number two, I don't want to learn new processes.
How much would it? Well, I think the finance piece is key. But how many computers have you bought? How many cars have you bought in the time that you've owned that computer? I mean, I do. Yeah, I
Lots.
do think buying a new computer would be expensive.
Yeah. Yeah, it
And
would.
yeah, and Pro Tools is no longer, like, you can't get an LE version.
No,
You
you
can either
can't.
buy a lifetime license or subscribe, because now it's like fucking Netflix.
Yeah, that was two.
Um,
Now we're rated R.
I'll edit all that out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. I totally believe you. Um,
Um,
yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you that the democratization of recording is a good thing for people. It's a good thing for the industry because it also helps prevent the labels from fleecing artists for tens of thousands of dollars like they used to with advances.
mhm.
um when you can go home and record your album on Logic with a laptop, you don't need to dump $500,000 into recording an album. Now,
No.
can you? Yeah, sure you can.
Good.
Should you? Probably not. I mean, unless you're like Foo Fighters can dump $500,000 into recording an album because they know they're going to recoup it
On day one.
Yeah, but I can't. I couldn't even dump $1,000 into recording an album at this point for fear of, never recouping that money.
Mm-hmm.
A couple hundred. Yeah. I mean, I pay the guy that does the mixing for me, and that's worth every penny because, like I said, I'm not a good mixer. But for the amount of work he's doing compared to what I'm paying him, he ain't making money off of me. You know, I mean, I figure it probably takes him 12 to 15 hours to mix one of my songs with the
Mhm,
back and forth.
mhm.
Because I will nitpick and be like, from 32 seconds in, as the first verse goes into the second phrase, you need to, reduce the volume of the hi-hat, but for 12 seconds and then bring it back up 0.2 dB. I'm that guy, right? I can't do the mixing, but I'll tell you how to do
Oh yeah, of course.
it. No, but I mean, as we work together more, he's
Mhm.
more tuned into what I want to hear.
Yeah.
And so, the first song he mixed for me took a long time.
Okay.
I don't anticipate the next song taking that long, because
Okay.
now he's got a much better idea what I want. But, I think it's a good thing. I'm happy to be part of the process, even if I'm the slow end of change, you know. I mean, I think the last new recording thing I bought was this riff interface, and it was it was on sale for $99.
Okay.
And it's worth every penny.
That's fantastic.
You know, if I wanted to, I could take a guitar and that thing and my laptop on vacation and have like a writing weekend, you
Yeah.
know. But do you want to add anything? I think I've said all I need to say.
Yeah, I'm glad we talked about it. Like I said, that Steve Stevens quote kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, I can tell.
Only, yeah, it really did. It kind of irked me. It was
It's
almost
all
like
right.
a direct, it was almost like it was a direct insult to my son. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
he's almost getting ready to blow you away. Stop it. But no, I'm good.
All right, cool. Well, in that case, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the democratization of home recording, a different strings joint. Uh, I'm Wes.
I'm
He's
Andrew.
Andrew. We greatly, greatly appreciate you spending some of your listening time with us. We love talking into your ear holes, and we hope that you learned something. If you want to talk about this recording concept, the democratization of recording, or just tell us about your recording rig in whatever state it's in, please feel free to join us in the comments and discuss away. I would love to find out what other people are using, especially if you're using Pro Tools LE 6.4. I want to hear from anybody else in the entire world using that system, so that I
You
don't
are
feel
not
so
going to hear
alone.
from anybody.
I know, it's already
I
crickets.
almost hope something happens to your LE and you have to call Avid and tell them that you need support. And I want to hear how long they laugh on the phone.
Oh yeah, well, I had a question about something, um and they sent back a very polite email saying we no longer support that system.
That's all it was.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And they wanted to see a picture.
No one here was alive when that was released.
Yeah, pretty much. But thanks everybody for joining us on Different Strings. Make sure you come back for not just the next big episode, but the next iteration of Music That Matters, which is kind of a secondary offering that we have, and that's going to come out. And Andrew's going to talk about an album that he thinks matters, that you should be aware of and probably even listening to. And that's going to be the next thing that comes out after this. And then we're going to be back with another episode before you can shake a stick at your computer. Andrew, one more time for the folks at home, remind them where they can find us on the internet.
differentstringspodcast.com. Please and thank you.
There you go. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right.